Greetings, dear brothers and sisters. My name is Michelle. I'm with the Lighthouse News. This is the next in our series of DVDs, and we've entitled this one SDA Revival or APOSTASY. But first, a little prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for allowing the Lord Jesus Christ to leave heaven and come down to this earth and die for us on Calvary's cross. We thank you so much, Lord, for forgiving us our sins when we come to you in repentance and washing them and cleansing them in the blood of Jesus Christ's righteousness. And we thank you, Lord, for thy word, thy holy word, and the testimonies you've given us, Lord, to lead us along a safe pathway to heaven. We thank thee and praise thee in the name of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Amen. Before we continue, dear brothers and sisters, I'd like to mention again the problems in the Seventh-day Adventist Church with spiritual formation. Now, the Voice of Prophecy has announced that Elizabeth Talbot, the senior pastor at Grace Place, the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Alhambra, California, will be teaching spiritual formation for the Voice of Prophecy on the Hope Channel. Now, we did a clip about that some time ago on a previous DVD. Now, they were calling it spiritual formation, but because a lot of people complained, they've just changed the name to Jesus 101. For those who are not familiar with the history of spiritual formation, it is a program to develop spirituality. Spiritual formation is considered by many Bible-believing Christians, both Adventists and those in other denominations, to include techniques such as meditation, contemplative prayer, and other methods that are found in New Age and Eastern mysticism that are a subtle form of spiritualism. Spiritual formation was originated by Ignatius Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits, as a method of preparing Jesuit novices for their mission and work. The modern versions of it apparently come directly from the Roman Catholic Church in training centres. Now, one popular one in New York City it's run by the nuns, where pastors from many denominations, including ours, have gone to be trained in teaching this evil course. It is couched in Christian terminology and claims as its goal to bring people closer to Christ. There are apparently a number of books, including books by ministers of various denominations, as well as those by Eastern mystics, that are used. Now, Pastor Derek Morris, newly appointed editor of Ministry magazine that is sent out to all Adventist pastors worldwide, was at one time a strong promoter and teacher of spiritual formation. Now, his attitude has changed, and he sees it now as a dangerous mixture of truth and error. So, very, very serious problems with the emergent church and the spiritual formation. Now, also, the General Conference President, in his sermon, Go Forward, Not Backwards, said, "Go forward, not backward. Do not succumb to the mistaken idea gaining support even in the Seventh-day Adventist Church of accepting worship or evangelistic outreach methods merely because they are new and trendy. We must be vigilant to test all things according to the supreme authority of God's Word and the counsel with which we have been blessed by in the writing of Ellen G. White. Don't reach out to movements or megachurch centres outside the Seventh-day Adventist Church which promise you spiritual success based on faulty theology. Stay away from non-biblical spiritual disciplines or methods of spiritual formation that are rooted in mysticism such as contemplative prayer, centering prayer, and the emerging church movement in which they are promoted. Look within the Seventh-day Adventist Church to humble pastors, evangelists, Bible scholars, leaders, and departmental directors who can provide evangelistic methods and programs that are based on solid biblical principles and the great controversy theme. Go forward, not backwards. Use Christ-centered, Bible-based worship and music practices in church services. While we understand that worship services and cultures vary throughout the world, don't go backwards into confusing pagan settings where music and worship become so focused on emotion and experience that you lose the central focus on the Word of God. All worship, however simple or complex, should do one thing and one thing only: lift up Christ and put down self. Worship methods that lift up performance and self should be replaced with a simple and sweet reflection of Christ-centered biblical approach. To define it too closely is impossible, but when you read in Scripture of the holiness of God's presence, the Holy Spirit will help you to know what is right and what is wrong. And the reference for this is www.scribed.com /doc/33861 and it's Ted Wilson's sermon, Go Forward, if you just want to check that. So that's from the conference president of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Have nothing to do with spiritual formation or this Jesus 101. I cannot believe that the voice of prophecy would allow it to continue using Elizabeth Talbot. It's just diabolical that they want to do this when we have the Word of God and we have the spirit of prophecy to get closer to God. It's a serious crisis coming in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Professor Walter Wyeth has stated that Seventh-day Adventists should return to the conference fold and return all tithes to the conference, as with the current president, Ted Wilson. Now, here's his comment, and he says, to independent groups or ministries who have found themselves somewhat distanced from official church connection and have accepted tithe for support, contact your local church and local conference and return to a warm and appropriate relationship, refusing to accept tithe and encouraging members to return their tithe through the storehouse of the local church. Remember your name. The Adventist World Church created the International Board of Ministerial and Theological Education in September 2001. Among those on this board who implemented the teaching of spiritual formation to Adventist leaders worldwide was Ted Wilson. Now, this information is in the Handbook of Seventh-day Adventist Ministerial and Theological Training, Appendix B. Is that confusing? God has a church. It is not the great cathedral, neither is it the national establishment, neither is it the various denominations. It is the people who love God and keep His commandments. Where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. Matthew 18:20. Where Christ is even among the humble few, this is Christ's church. For the presence of the high and holy one who inhabiteth eternity can alone constitute a church. Where 2 or 3 are present who love and obey the commandments of God, Jesus there presides. Let it be in the desolate place of the earth, in the wilderness, in the city enclosed in prison walls. The glory of God has penetrated the prison walls, flooding with glorious beams of heavenly light the darkest dungeon. Now, I can't walk back into a church where spiritual formation is taught, where hypocrisy reigns, where they use neurolinguistic programming techniques and Eastern mystical practices. I can't do that. Where they use New Age Catholic Bible versions and refuse to give out the message of the 3 angels. We were raised up to give out the first, second and third angels' message, and it's something that the bulk of Seventh-day Adventists aren't doing. Ezekiel 8:16 says, And he brought me into the inner court of the Lord's house, and behold, the door of the temple of the Lord, between the porch and the altar were about 25 men, with their backs towards the temple of the Lord, and their faces toward the east, and they worshipped the sun towards the east. And interestingly, I've got some information here about a committee that is called the General Conference Officers Committee. It's made up of about 25 or 26 individuals. Now, isn't that interesting language? It's about as the Bible says. Now, this committee is a screening committee that determines the items that need to go to the General Conference Committee. Now, this is a letter from the office of the President of the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, B.E. Jacobs, Administrative Assistant to the President, November the 1st, 1990. This letter contains the watermark Seventh-day Adventist with 3 wavy lines across the A. So that's interesting in the light of just having read that verse from Ezekiel 8. Armed with information about this General Conference Officers Committee, which is made up of about 25 or 26 individuals, it puts things in quite a different light, because these 25 or about 25 individuals in the Seventh-day Adventist Church are the ones that make the decisions. So anything that's been coming in, NLP, all the Eastern mystical spiritual practices, the spiritual formation, the purpose-driven church, all these abominations and apostasies that have come in have been screened by this committee, and it's then sent on to an executive committee, and they shall be 25 in number. Now that says 1901 General Conference Bulletin, page 379, column 1, paragraph 2, article 4, section 1. So that executive committee shall be 25 in number. They've changed that. But this other committee, the General Conference Officers, is about 25 or 26 individuals. So they're the ones making all the decisions. Very interesting. Have you noticed, dear brothers and sisters, as you enter a Seventh-day Adventist church, either outside or inside, up the back as we kneel and pray, there will be an obelisk. Some are quite apparent, especially outside, as you'll see in these pics, and some inside, but there's a similarity to them all. My question is, what's an obelisk doing in a Seventh-day Adventist church, and why is it there? Because obelisks are for sun worship. Some would say that I'm being a little bit nitpicky, but again I ask the question, what is an obelisk doing in a Seventh-day Adventist church with all the knowledge that we have? Next we have a clip from Pastor Walter Vyeth on the Seventh-day Adventist church, that it's not Babylon. Well, I totally agree, because the Holy Word of God tells us that in Revelation 17 verse 5, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. So this can't be the Seventh-day Adventist church. That is the Catholic Church.
You have been accused by some people who've attended your seminars as stating that the Seventh-day Adventist church is in fact Babylon.
Well, I can only say that those people who accuse me of that, and there are many that are of that ilk, have never attended my meetings. It makes her a prostitute. So yes, we have prostitutes in the church that have prostituted themselves, but this church is the apple of the Lord's eye, and it will go through to the kingdom.
Unfortunately, that's not quite true. The church are the people. It's not the structure. The structure will fall. Crest Collection, page 153, says that Christ wept not only for ancient Israel, but for a church right down at the end of time that had great light, but had married itself to the papacy. Crest Collection, page 153. Here's some more quotes from the Spirit of Prophecy. The enemy of souls has sought to bring in the supposition that a great reformation was to take place among Seventh-day Adventists, and that this reformation would consist in giving up the doctrines which stand as the pillars of our faith, and engaging in a process of reorganization. Were this reformation to take place, what would be the result? The principles of truth that God in His wisdom has given to the remnant church would be discarded. Our religion would be changed. The fundamental principles that have sustained the work for the last 50 years would be accounted as error. A new organisation would be established. Books of a new order would be written. A system of intellectual philosophy would be introduced. The founders of this system would go into the cities and do a wonderful work. The Sabbath, of course, would be lightly regarded, as also the God who created it. Their foundation would be built on the sand. Now that's Selected Messages, Book 1, page 204 to 205. Now here's another interesting statement from the Spirit of Prophecy. I believe every word in the Word of God and the Spirit of Prophecy. The Lord has a controversy with his professed people in these last days. In this controversy, men in responsible positions will take a course directly opposite to that pursued by Nehemiah. They will not only ignore and despise the Sabbath themselves, but they will try to keep it from others by burying it beneath the rubbish of custom and tradition. In churches and in large gatherings in the open air, ministers will urge upon the people the necessity of keeping the first day of the week. That's Review and Herald, March 18, 1884. This is coming, dear brothers and sisters. This is coming. We've also included a CD with this DVD by ex-conference evangelist Pastor Norman Baker. Now, he was told that the Seventh-day Adventist Church is not controlled by leadership from Silver Springs. It is controlled from New York. Now, my personal belief is that it's controlled by the Knights of Malta. Here's a clip from Pastor Ted Wilson telling independent groups and others to return all their tithes and also come back into the fold of the General Conference Church.
To those who find themselves drifting far from the theological center of the Word and the fundamental beliefs of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, remember your name. To young people who are caught up in living life in the fast lane with little regard for the church, remember your name and come home. To those who are older and have become fossilized and static and stale in their Christian experience, which probably includes a lot of us, remember your name. To independent groups or ministries who have found themselves somewhat distant from official church connection and have accepted tithe for support, contact your local church and local conference and return to a warm and appropriate relationship, refusing to accept tithe and encouraging members to return their tithe through the storehouse of the local church. Remember your name.
I wonder if they'd really be happy with me coming back into the Seventh-day Adventist Church and reading from the King James Bible, and also telling the Catholics and showing them that they're teaching, listening to and preaching the wrong gospel, and that if they don't keep the commandments of God, they'll receive the mark of the beast. I wonder if the Seventh-day Adventist Church would be happy with me upsetting the ministers fraternal and the combined churches by speaking up and warning them that they're keeping the wrong day. I wonder if they'd really want me back in the church. These things I was doing with love, but I'd still be speaking out and speaking the truth, because I don't want to be lost. I want to go home and be with Jesus. Here's a clip of Pastor B.T. Rice offering gracious welcomes to the old Pope.
Pope, Your Holiness, your historic visit to St. Louis, Missouri has served as a catalyst in the creation of this program, and it transforms your presence into a lasting legacy for our region. Today, we present to you this proclamation announcing the creation of Faith Beyond Walls. Your commitment to improving interfaith relations has fostered an environment wherein the spirit of collective faith, positively action, can thrive. In addition, we also present you with this banner, the emblem of Faith Beyond Walls. We hope and pray that it will inspire interfaith communities around the world to focus their efforts on improving health and the quality of life for all humanity. Again, we welcome you to our region.
Here is SDA pastor Joe Grider in his priestly attire.
Divine hand protecting them. They were on earth, but they were called and chosen directly to become the people of Yahweh.
In this clip, SDA pastor Dwight Nelson says that the Muslim God, Allah, is the God of heaven.
What you're about to see is a Seventh-day Adventist pastor preach to a huge TV audience that the God of the Muslim and the God of the Christian are one and the same. As we know via the testimony of an ex-Jesuit priest named Alberto Rivera, who was killed for his testimony, the Roman Catholic Vatican invented Islam hundreds of years ago to do away with the Sabbath-keeping Jews and Christians. And by the way, you can see the documented proof by copying the URL you see on the screen into your browser right now. Even though we know that this is indeed a confirmed historic fact, in the following video, not only does Pastor Dwight Nelson of the Pioneer Memorial SDA Church state we shouldn't look to Rome to research Islam, he also declares on 3ABN back on December 11th of 2010 in a sermon titled, Star Still Rising Over Islam, that Allah is the same God of the Christians, and the Quran holds the same truths as the Bible. Also notice his body movements and the tone of his voice as he preaches this spurious sermon. He is actually using what's called neuro-linguistic programming on his audience. For those of you that are unaware of NLP or neuro-linguistic programming, it is a modern term for an old Masonic method of mass hypnosis that was used to spread their message to the masses in their infancy. In fact, the SDA Church has already been found to have been training hundreds of pastors to use this technique for decades. Copy the link on the screen that you see now to view the 200 names of the SDA leaders that have been trained in this satanic art called neuro-linguistic programming or mass hypnotism. In fact, it states clearly in the Quran that Christians must die, and over 200,000 Christians are being martyred each and every year by Muslims right now. This SDA pastor actually preached we should worship Allah along with them. Notice the picture on your screen right now. That's actually Seventh-day Adventist students bowing to Allah in a Muslim mosque in Arusha. I share this picture to illustrate this isn't just one pastor doing this in the SDA Church. This photo can be found in the summer issue of Andrews University 2009 Focus magazine on page 21. You can also view or download this picture by copying the link on your screen right now. The fact this happened back in 2009 proves this is nothing new for the SDA Church. As far as we know, they have now been preaching a pro-Islam message in their churches and universities for at least 2 years. Keep in mind, it has also been at least 2 years since the Vatican has been performing an ecumenical push with the Islamic people as well. With that being said, let's take a look at the video.
That if you want to know the truth about Islam, don't go to Rome. Go to Bethlehem instead. I recently listened to a series of CDs, lectures given by the late Dr. Robert Darnell, a member of our community of faith, an expert in Islamic studies, an anthropologist, in which he carefully chronicled how, in fact, the Quran teaches the seeds of every divine truth that you and I embrace. The seeds are all there. It was Darnell's lifetime mission and conviction to cultivate those seeds in dialogue with the children of the East. And in an hour of history, when the West is turning against those children, ought we not to be the first to raise up our voices in their behalf? Think. Why shouldn't we? For what if? And by the way, the story of Christmas would hardly let us do otherwise, would it? What if the Spirit, the mighty Spirit of Allah... By the way, I got some letters from viewers after that last teaching. And one viewer said, don't you know that the name Allah is a name for Lucifer? Oh, I hope you never embrace that. Allah, listen carefully now. Allah is closer to Elohim, the Hebrew name for God, than is our English word God. In fact, hold on to your seats. The English name God is a Nordic pagan god. We've taken a pagan god's name and we said, that's the name of our God. And we all call him God. That's a pagan. It's a Nordic pagan myth. So don't you ever get pushed into the corner where you're saying Allah is a demonic name. Allah is the name of the living God. Allah is the creator of the universe. Allah is the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Ishmael, Jethro, Job, and even Balaam.
The God of Abraham, Isaac, the God of Ishmael is not Allah. Their God is the Creator God. This Allah was invented by the Catholic Church in the 6th century. In this next clip, the SDA Church in the Adventist magazine defends the Antichrist power.
Adventist Today magazine published an article entitled Letting Roman Catholics Off the Hook. And it was written by some guy named, or woman, I don't know, I think it's a guy, Lauren Siebold. I think a woman has an A in there. So Siebold gives 7 reasons why Seventh-day Adventists should no longer trust Ellen White, the original pillars of their faith, or the scriptures themselves. Now, of course, he doesn't say it that way, but when you listen to what he says in this article, that's what's going on here. All right? I would like to share a point-by-point of this article to give an idea of just how bad it's gotten in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The article starts off by saying, for over a century, even before the publication of the Great Controversy, we Adventists have regarded the Roman Catholic Church leadership, typified in the first beast of Revelation 13, as our arch nemesis, our bête noire, as they call it. I think that's French for black beast, or the enemy that takes the evil part of the apocalyptic scenario against God's remnant. Here are 7 reasons why it may be time to question them in that role. And by the way, Sister White did prophesy that the Seventh-day Adventist Church would do this, even though a lot of the Seventh-day Adventist people will say that no, she never did. But then again, that's because they don't read her writings; they only listen to their pastors. But she did predict that the Seventh-day Adventist people would go and join hands with Rome. So number 1, this is their first excuse, right? And it's right there in box number 1. It says, more than 100 years have passed since our prophet approved these prophetic applications. Ellen White expected Jesus to return long before this. We're not sure why that hasn't happened. Now, stopping here for a minute, I am convinced the only reason the Seventh-day Adventist Church is not sure why Jesus hasn't returned yet is because the leaders are not what some would call original SDA material. Original SDA material, okay? They don't have the same doctrines we have, the Seventh-day Remnant, which is from the original Seventh-day Adventist Church 150-some years ago. They do not study Scripture, nor do they read Sister White's writings. Truth is, had they done so, they would have known she said the following in the year 1896. This is from Review and Herald, October 6, 1896, paragraph 7. It says, if those who claim to have a living experience in the things of God had done their appointed work as the Lord ordained, the whole world would have been warned ere this, and the Lord Jesus would have come in power and great glory. For God has appointed a day in the which he will judge the world. He tells us when that day shall come. And Jesus said, this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. Jesus wants every minister to whom he has committed a trust to be faithful, to remember his injunctions, to contemplate the vastness of the work, and upon how large a number of the obligation rests. You shall receive power after the Holy Ghost has come upon you, and you shall be witnesses unto me, both in Jerusalem and in all Judea and in Samaria and unto the uttermost part of the earth. So there you have it. If they read their Bibles and the spirit of prophecy, they would realize that God has appointed a specific day. There is no reason to say we are not sure why this hasn't happened. But Jesus said in Matthew 24, verse 36, of that day and hour no man knoweth, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. Okay? Another fact they missed is that Sister White did in fact say if the ministers who were called to do the work had done their appointed work as the Lord ordained, he would have returned. Could it be the Seventh-day Adventist Church is hiding that fact to prevent the people from seeing they failed at their post? I believe this is to be the case here. The work wasn't done. The Lord didn't come. End of story. So continuing with the article, it says, but isn't it possible that some details of the apocalyptic scenario set out in the 1890s may have changed by the 2010s. It happened to Israel. Not all the original Old Testament prophecies about them and their role came to pass. We call it conditional prophecy. Well, they can call it whatever they like. But according to my Bible, to the law and the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it's because there's no light in them. Another prophet said that. His name was Isaiah, and he said it in chapter 8, verse 20. Using terms like, isn't it possible, or maybe, or perhaps, or could be, is making a doctrine out of a question. And they assume their flock will trust in that pattern or definition that they prescribe. No, it isn't possible that the prophetic facts could change. To suggest such a thing is to call our Creator God a liar. No, nothing changed for Israel in the past except maybe the severity of punishments as they repented in the way. They got the punishments, but it didn't go as far because the prayers were there. The Word of God is plain in Malachi chapter 3, verse 6, for I am the Lord, I change not. What they hope to do in this statement from Adventists today is to generate just enough doubt in the hearts of their flock so as to keep them in the church. The timing is right here for such an article like this for Adventists today to do this. The people are ready to hear whatever they say, and they know it. A decade or so ago, an article like this, it never would have been allowed because it would have offended many, especially in that the writer never explains his statements regarding certain prophecies he claims never came to be. Rome did this, the very same thing a few years ago, and I did a radio thing on this about how they proclaimed certain verses in the Bible were not trustworthy. Of course, they never, ever, ever showed you which verses they were talking about because they know if they did, those that do study the Bible would expose them for the false teachers that they are. So, of course, they left that part out. Statements like this make it easy for the young in Christ to give up and think that something in the Bible may not be true because some theologian said so, and seeing how that they are so new to the Word, they figure they cannot know for sure which verse it is they're speaking about. So, and especially in the case of, like right here, the supposed prophecies that failed, they figure Christianity is way too hard for them to master, so they either leave Jesus Christ altogether and pick some other religion, or they bow in worship of the pastor, which the majority of the SDAs are doing now, thinking it's better just to trust that man since with their salvation, since that's his job to study the Word of God anyway. So they just trust him hands down. Because that's what Rome does. This is exactly what Rome does. They generate blind trust in their congregations eons ago. This also proves how Roman Catholicism, the Vatican itself, now owns the Seventh-day Adventist Church. This is a blatant Roman Catholic fruit, to say the least. That type of statement, theology, or mindset, that's Roman Catholicism. Okay, now here's excuse number 2. They say principles might be more diagnostic than players. That's their little headline for the question. And then they say that we oppose those who would legislate matters that should be left to an individual's conscience is a principle I value. And I'm proud of Seventh-day Adventist efforts to protect religious liberty. But if it should happen that someone other than the Roman Catholic Church begins to act like the beast of Revelation 13, we will be more ready to respond if we are watching for a violation of the principle than in waiting for one specific group to offend. The Jesuits know, okay? They know that Roman Catholicism has spread so far and so wide that now they can perform their prophesied wicked acts in many different denominations. I mean, case in point, they're all going to church on Sunday, and we all know that the Roman Catholic Church put it in writing that they invented Sunday keeping. You can look from Genesis to Revelation. There's not a single Bible verse that said God changed the Sabbath. The Vatican did, just like Daniel prophesied they would in Daniel 7:25. If you look at the Jesuit oath, they declare it is their duty. I've got the Jesuit oath on the website if you need it, but they declare it is their duty to infiltrate each and every denomination on earth so as to change it from within, and once there, they can use that denomination to do their work for Rome. So they can act like a Baptist or a Methodist or a Mennonite or a Lutheran or even a Muslim if they want and do these crazy acts, and then Rome can sit back and go, oh, that was just so wrong to do, and act like, you know, they're all holy and all that, when in fact they're the ones doing it. So the reason they do that, of course, is to get the beacon of light off of them and pointing elsewhere. You know, that's just a smokescreen. It's just like the old speakeasies in the 1920s. You know, they do the crime in the back room and they have this legitimate business out front. The Vatican performs many heinous acts over the centuries using all sorts of pawns like this. Well, I mean, look at World War II, for example. Rome was able to perform various war crimes through one man. Many to this day still think it was all Hitler's fault, when in fact all he was doing was following orders. Yes, Hitler was a very, very evil man, but his director was far worse. Adventists today knows Rome has their talents in many different areas all around the world. As a result, they can say with confidence, look, the Vatican had nothing to do with this act prophecy says Antichrist would do. Yet in reality, it was the Vatican doing that act all along. And Adventist today knows that, because you can see the fruits of Roman Catholicism here. It appears to be a Jesuit speaking here. He knows Rome has done this before, and he knows that Roman Catholicism works that way. This La Cosa Nostra method, or mafioso method, has served them well for centuries, and it will work even better today, since they are indeed everywhere, just as prophesied. I mean, they're even in Washington, D.C. Okay, here's reason number 3. It says, Ellen White fingered Catholicism in a very different world. Historians have shown that the 19th century American anti-Catholicism grew out of a general anti-immigration nativism in an era when we had and could again have a liberty-loving Roman Catholic president, when Catholic immigrants had become our young workforce. Why can't we preach the gospel without identifying Roman Catholicism as Satan's exclusive tool? Well, the reason we cannot stop preaching Catholicism, Roman Catholicism, to be Satan's exclusive tool is because Jesus Christ told us not to. Revelation 18, verses 1 to 5 specifically says we must continue to warn God's people to come out of her. And no, anti-Catholicism did not come from anti-immigration type racism as suggested here. People fled to this country to escape Roman Catholic prelates that were torturing and killing hundreds of millions of Christians that wanted to worship Christ the way the Bible said. We were just reading about this in the Great Controversy. That is undeniable, overwhelming historic fact no man can change, although they do try to. Because I remember when I was in high school in the 70s, I looked at some of the stuff and I said, oh, come on. You're trying to tell me in this history book that this nation was started because people fled the United Kingdom or Britain because of high taxes? I know why the people left. It's because popes were killing you people. And I was 17 years old when I saw that. Still a Catholic at that time. So anyone with a competent knowledge of history knows Adventists today just told a bold-faced lie. Very easily. I mean, this is the age of lying, so you're going to see it in many places. Okay, here's reason number 4. The Roman Catholic Church of today is a much different institution than it was during Ellen White's time. The Second Ecumenical Council of the Vatican II, which is in between 62 and 65, radically altered that denomination's theology and practices. Radically? The only reason I can assume they're sharing this is to make some think they have changed for the better. However, I was a teacher of Roman Catholic doctrine back in the 1980s, early 1980s. And I can tell you by personal experience that over 85% of Roman Catholic doctrine is not found in Scripture. That being said, does it really matter what Vatican II had to say for or against the truth when they came forward? I mean, they did that 20 years before I was teaching Catholicism, and Catholicism in the 80s was no different than it was in the 60s or the 50s before the Vatican II. If they speak not according to this word, there is no light in them. We understand this. But no, Roman Catholicism hasn't changed at all, doctrinally speaking. Only her method of attack has changed to a more stealthy approach. Now, continuing with reason number 4, they say Vatican II declared the gospel central to church theology, made worship accessible, denied the Roman Catholics only can be saved, and encouraged lay Bible study and affirmed religious liberty. Besides the fact that, no, they did not and never do declare the gospel central to the church theology by the simple fact that they preach pagan doctrines over 85% of the time, the fact they claim in Vatican II affirmed others outside the Roman Catholic Church can be saved goes directly against what the church is preaching today. The Latin phrase, extra ecclesiasm nulla salus, means outside the church there is no salvation. This theology is very much a part of Roman Catholic dogma to this day. In fact, Pope Benedict XVI stated in writing on July 10th, 2007, if it's not Catholic, it's not really a church. That's word for word what he said. Obvious fact is, all of the Vatican's main websites have in-depth studies echoing and backing his theological statements on this topic. That being the case, is Adventist today doing any research at all? Are they pulling this stuff out of thin air or something? Or are they simply lying for the ecumenical purposes, hoping their readers won't check up on them? There is so much evidence to prove this to be a lie that I'm amazed there wasn't an uproar when it was published. Doesn't anyone remember all the media hype and the anger from the Protestants and the Muslims and other religions when the Pope made those statements back in 2007? It was on all the news stations globally. Anyway, continuing with reason number 4, Adventists Today declares that Vatican II, while not quite a Protestant Reformation, today's Catholic Church is not the same Catholic Church referenced in our 19th century eschatological studies. Among other things, the Second Ecumenical Council weakened Vatican authority over world Catholics, as evidenced by the 78% of the American Catholics who oppose their church's ban on contraception. Well, this here is a strong man's argument, in that Catholics have always had a problem with this, as well as many other doctrines and prophetic earmarks exposing them as Antichrist. I know. I was devout Catholic for 29 years. Yes, the devout ones did follow Rome's advice blindly. That's why I'm one of 11 kids. But just as we see SDAs doing today, most Catholics aren't devout. As we look around and see how Roman Catholic doctrines are found in all denominations, including the Seventh-day Adventist Church, then yes, I agree. It was not a Protestant Reformation for many. It was, as prophecy predicted and fulfilled, however. The Protestants have joined with Rome, and now Adventists Today is hoping to use that prophetic fulfillment as a way to bring even more into the Babylonian fold. So yes, I agree. The Roman Catholic Church is not the same church it was in the 19th century. It's far worse. I mean, Hitler proved that. Only now they do their prophesied wicked acts in a more stealthy manner, as the modern-day Jesuit oath declares. And I got the whole quote on the website, but it's this, to give you an idea, a little blurb of what it says. It says, I furthermore promise and declare that I will, when opportunity presents, make and wage relentless war, secretly or openly, against all heretics. And by the way, March 12, 2000, during the mea culpa of the Roman Catholic Pope John Paul II II, he declares you, me, anybody that's not a Catholic, a heretic. Still, in the year 2000, they still preach that. So secretly or openly against all heretics, Protestants, and liberals, as I am directed to do, to extirpate and exterminate them from the face of the whole earth. Now, of course, it goes on from here, and it is quite blood-curdling, to say the least, and because there's kids present, I'm not reading it. So Rome hasn't changed, and soon we will see that Hitler was just a warm-up pitch for them. Thanks to their invention of Islam, which we now have verified online, that the Roman Catholic Church did in fact invent the religion of Islam so that they can do what they're doing today with it, with the terrorism and all these other strange things, just like they did with Hitler. We are now seeing the killings that are increasing with each passing day. In 2000 alone, 2009 alone, just from January to November, because I couldn't find December statistics on it yet for 2000. I guess they haven't finished them. But in 2009 alone, the first 11 months, 165,000 Christians died at the hands of Muslims. And I think 180 or 185,000 were tortured by Muslims. Now this is just Muslims. I'm not talking about Buddhists or the Chinese and all, and the other, strange, like the Koreans and all what they do to Christians. This is just Muslims. So anyway, reason number 5 that the Seventh-day Adventist Church says that the Seventh-day Adventists should have a big old group hug with the Catholics. So reason number 5 says, by focusing on Roman Catholicism, we may miss more dangerous anti-Christian opponents. Far more Christians have been killed, persecuted, or denied their religious liberty by communism, military fascism, and Islamic extremism in the past century than by Roman Catholics. We've let these pass with minimal comment. In the case of Nazism, even offering some pusillanimous, anonymous, or I don't know, that is a strange-looking word, but it means cowardly. I looked it up. So even offering some cowardly cooperation as we continue to warn against the Pope. Today, religious liberty still has more dangerous enemies than Catholicism in the United States, perhaps even some of our fellow conservative Protestants. Now they're pointing the finger at us. So here, Adventists Today seeks to make the Pope look not so bad by proclaiming other religions are worse. This everyone else is doing it pretext is an age-old maneuver. Does this take away the fact that prophecy specifically defined the Great Tribulation of the Christians, wherein 500 million Christians died at the hands of Rome? Does it take it away? Just because Rome is in their prophesied lull doesn't mean that they have changed. In fact, Sister White herself stated in the Last Day Events on page 130 that Rome never changes. It is Protestantism that will change. The fact Adventists today, a spokesperson for Protestantism today, is changing their tune regarding Roman Catholicism says a lot for the accuracy of Ellen White's writings once again. I mean, it's amazing how many prophetic statements this woman has made that are happening right now, today, in our life. So anyway, it's been proved that Hitler was indeed following orders from Rome by literally thousands of authors over the last century. I've got a page on the website all about this, pictures and all. It has also been proven that the Nation of Islam was indeed created by the Roman Catholic Church so as to allow them to kill in hiding as they did with Hitler. And the seat that the Pope sits on, that throne, if you flip it upside down, it says dedicated to Allah in Arabic. And then it's got a verse from the Quran. The Jesuit oath alone proves that this is their agenda, hands down. I mean, just looking at all the blood-curdling things that are going on in the world and how the Jesuits said that they're going to do this behind closed doors, acting like other religions. I mean, and praise the Lord that they had to throw that oath forward in a courtroom, because that's where I got it's an actual court transcript. Somebody read the Jesuit oath in a courtroom, and it was transcribed in a courtroom. So we now know that they were planning to do this, and now we see it happening. The fact Adventists today is failing to mention that historic reality proves to me that the SDA Church is indeed in bed with Rome at this time, overwhelmingly, 100%. For nearly 3 decades now, I have witnessed Catholics use this method to defend their popes and prelates by pointing fingers elsewhere. You know, when the molestation scandal hit here in the States, many Catholics came forward to try to proclaim that they weren't the only ones doing this horrific act, so it can't mean their leaders are so bad. How does, I mean, this really boggles my mind, but how does admitting they have done these horrific acts make them appear to be innocent? Well, just because someone else is doing it means that, okay, then it must be okay. They literally admit they're doing it and then try to make it look like it's not that bad by saying someone else is doing it too. I don't get that mindset. It really confuses me. Even before I was a Christian, I didn't get that. It says, you just admitted this to me. You understand what you just said? They don't get that. So anyway, it always shows, to me anyway, a sign of desperation when they use that kind of tactic to talk their way out of trouble, while at the same time insult the intelligence of the person they're talking to, because they really don't realize what they just said. Okay, reason number 6. They said God has given us time to become a world church, and that changes the cast of characters in our eschatology. The Antichrist's opposers of Christ, to many of today's world Christians, are radical imams or cruel dictators. One site of Christian persecution right now is northern Nigeria, where Muslims burn churches and kill Christians, and eschatology that expects only Roman Catholics to initiate religious oppression. Only in the United States. See what they're doing there? They're saying, look, the prophecy says only the Catholics are supposed to be doing it, but look, the Muslims are doing it. An eschatology that expects only Roman Catholics to initiate religious oppression only in the United States and only around the Sabbath question may fail to speak prophetically should apocalyptic markers appear elsewhere. Anyway, first of all, eschatology is the matching of prophetic events to historic events. That's what eschatology is. It's a study I love, and I've been doing it for 26 years. Well, actually, 28 or 29 years. I was doing it as a Catholic. That's what eventually got me out of Catholicism. Anyway, so I got to ask, how can one change the characters after the fact? How can you change something that's already happened? I mean, wasn't that written the Antichrist would be housed in the Vatican until the day Jesus Christ comes to cause the smoke of her burning that Revelation 18:9 talks about? How can the prophecies change? Are the signposts still not pointing to the same place as prophecy said they will? Well, yeah, Muslims kill Christians, but history shows Rome created the Muslims to do just that. Rome has always used a multitude of characters so the people that fail to study Bibles they wouldn't catch it. They would think prophetic markers are changing places when in fact they never do. See, this is what he's trying to do in the article. He's trying to make it look like the prophetic markers have changed. No, they haven't. They're still where they're supposed to be. It's just that the players that Rome is using has changed. Rome is still doing it, though. This is a favored tactic of Rome via Satan, as prophesied by Daniel. In Daniel chapter 8, verse 25, I mean, their craftiness is going to prosper in their hand, just like Daniel said. One example of using their character-changing method has to be how Rome has been able to make literally billions of people believe that the Jews in the Middle East are the true chosen people, or the Israel of God. I did a video all about this. That deception has allowed many to ignore true prophetic events for centuries simply because they have been watching the Jews instead of the real Israel of God, that's you and me, when it comes to prophetic fulfillments all around us. No, the markers have never changed. The prophecy is just as firm as when it was penned. Rome has been known since day one to use deception and craftiness to try and pull the onus off of them. The Roman fruits of Adventists today prove this hands down in this article alone. If it is true that the characters and prophetic markers have changed, I need to ask a few questions. Is the Pope still seated on those 7 hills in Rome like prophecy said he would be, or has Islam now taken the Vatican? Or was it not the popes that killed for 1,260 years, as prophecy said, or did Islam suddenly do that? Was it not the popes that received the mortal wound that is now healing, or was it Islam? Was it not the prophesied popes that they would have power, they would lose it, and then they would return back into power? Or are we supposed to be watching Islam do that? Are they supposed to all of a sudden lose their power now and then come back? Have a lull and then come back? I mean, the popes did that, but I haven't seen the Islamic people do it, the Muslims. Does not the Pope still, to this day, claim to be a god on earth? Or is Islam doing that now? I mean, they're still doing that, the Pope. Does not the Pope demand worship even of Islamic leaders? I got pictures of Yasser Arafat kissing the Pope's ring. That's an act of worship. I got a video all about that too. Or has this suddenly switched to Islam? Are they now worshiping each other? Doesn't the Pope's title, 13 different titles, still equal 666 if you spell the titles in Latin or Greek and use gematria, which in Latin it's easy to do because Latin lettering is also their Roman numerals. So you just spell their names and add them up. They all equal 666 individually. Or did this somehow change to Islam? Does not the world wonder after the Pope in every media event, or do we now see Islamic paparazzi? 30,000 cameras were on Pope John Paul II when he came to this country back when he was alive. 30,000 cameras. Does not Roman Catholicism sport Babylonian doctrines 86% of the time, as prophecy said they would do till the end of time? Or did Islam suddenly start doing this? Are not most of the Roman Catholic priests homosexuals, as Daniel predicted they would be in Daniel chapter 11? Or has Islam now suddenly okayed homosexuality and they stopped killing those guys out there that they call homosexuals? Does not Rome still declare herself to be the mother church, or has Islam now done this? And finally, I don't want to go through all of these because there's just way, way, way too many of these, but my favorite, of course, is it not the Roman prelates that are pushing for Sunday laws in Washington, D.C. and in Europe right now? And they just did it in Germany. And right after Germany, right after that, the European Constitution was passed, the very next day, it was against the law to go to work on Sundays in Germany. Or now, is Islam suddenly started doing that? I think Islam worships on Friday, right? So, it is obvious they seek to pull the onus off, or put the onus, rather, on the Muslims as they did with Hitler. So I have to ask Adventists today, if in fact the Seventh-day Adventist Church is declaring the Muslim to be so bone evil, why is it Andrews University has a photo spread of dozens of Seventh-day Adventist students bowing down to Allah in a Muslim mosque in their 2009 summer edition of Focus magazine on page 21? For those of you listening on the radio or on the phone, just go to SDAApostasy.org and go to the pictures section of that website. Evidence and pictures. It's one of the ones that are on the bottom. It's near the bottom. A bunch of students bowing down to Allah in a mosque. So like Rome, the Seventh-day Adventist Church is now going for the odds that most aren't going to look into the claims that they're making here in this article, and those that do are so small in number, it won't affect their plans. You see, when you study prophecy, as Jesus commanded in Matthew 24:15 is our wise duty to do, then articles like this from Adventists today will become so transparent that it literally becomes child's play to refute. All right, here's the last one. This is reason number 7. Religious liberty has arguably improved in countries where Catholicism has influence. During my lifetime, this is the author speaking, of course, the papacy has frequently been a force for peace and freedom. Pope John Paul II opened the first breach in the Iron Curtain, and the Catholics have been more forthright in speaking against violence and oppression than many of our fellow conservative Protestants. Consider the irony that our evangelists are employing anti-Catholic teachings for soul winning in countries where the papacy helped win them that freedom. And then in parentheses he says, and the even greater irony that some of us still think that calling the Pope is the Antichrist is necessary to win souls to Christ. No, I'm sorry. Liberty has not improved. It's simply that Protestant churches have fallen to the same level as pagan Rome has lured them to fall. This too was prophesied. So yes, it may appear as if liberty has improved, but it's only because there's far less opposition to Roman Catholicism. The three frogs of Revelation are most assuredly on the same lily pad right now. The author for Adventist Today states the papacy has frequently been a force for peace and freedom. Like Satan, displaying the kingdoms of the world to Christ, at the end of those 40 days when he was in the desert, he isn't showing all the facts here. You know, Satan just said, look at the glory of these nations, and if you worship me, I'll give them all to you. And he shows how pretty the nations are, all the glorious parts of the nation, all the best times in their history. He doesn't show them the wars, the pestilence, the famines, and all the homosexuality and the decadence. He doesn't show them any of that garbage. He just shows them all the nice. That's it. Well, my website has literally thousands of pages proving that no, peace and freedom are not the fruit of Rome today. Never has been, never will be. Everything from raping hundreds of thousands of children to forcing Irish Catholics to kill Protestants have been the fruit of Rome in recent days. In fact, in June of 2001, the Roman Catholic Church proclaimed you must renounce your faith or die in many Mexican towns, not thinking that was going to hit the global network. We got wind of it. It's on the site now. Actually, it was on the radio, too. They burned homes and livestock of all the Christians that refused to convert to Catholicism. Sadly, some did convert out of fear. We were talking about this earlier. One man's body was actually burned after he was killed as a way to generate even more fear to those refusing to comply. So no, peace and freedom is not a Vatican fruit. Seriously, what of the Jesuit oath that is still valid today? How can they say this is a peaceful church when that oath is still there? What are the Roman Catholic hospitals that still perform live birth abortions? I did a radio thing on this and everything. They got caught. Is that peace and freedom? I mean, I could literally speak for months on how Rome has been involved in many unmerciful acts. Suffice it to say, Adventist Today lied again. Adventist Today also speaks highly of Pope John Paul II, as do many the world over that seek to see him as canonized as a saint. But like Satan, at the end of those 40 days, they failed to tell the people all the evils that are in his closet. Like, for example, John Paul II's family supplied the cyanide that killed all the Jews. And in February of 1991, he reopened the Office of Inquisition and renamed it the Holy Office, of which Cardinal Ratzinger, who is now the Pope, ensconced in a big scandal about child molestation. The Pope is actually involved in this big time now. He, Cardinal Ratzinger, overlooked and oversaw. He was the overseer of that Office of Inquisition. And then he became, they actually called him God's Rottweiler. This is how Satan always works. This is why you see so many Roman Catholic hospitals and charities today. They gild the lily of deception, like Satan did at the end of that 40 days, by acting as if they care out in the open, while behind closed doors they're killing in the most unmerciful manner. Well, anyway, the article goes on from there with a whole mess of other strange comments and such that I don't have time to go into that today, but I'm going to put them in my next newsletter, because if I go into it today, I'm going to go way over, and I don't want to do that. So in closing, I'm going to share with you two quotes from Sister White. Okay, this first one's from Testimonies, Volume 5, page 451. She says, when Protestantism shall stretch her hand across the gulf to grasp by the hand of Roman power, when she shall reach over the abyss to clasp hands with spiritualism, when under the influence of this threefold union, you know, the three frogs, our country shall repudiate every principle of its constitution as a Protestant Republican government. And that's another prediction she made that just happened Monday when they signed into law the health care thing, which is totally against the Constitution. They can't force American people to buy something, but now they are forcing you to get health insurance. If you don't, you get fined. So anyway, and shall make provision for the propagation of papal falsehoods and delusions, then we may know that the time has come for the marvelous working of Satan and that the end is near. Okay? So she's saying, what she's saying more or less is like, Because Adventists today, this article more or less says they're clasping hands with spiritualism, with the Pope. They have reached their hand across the gulf to grasp the hand of the Roman power. In this article, they're trying to get everybody in the church to say, hey, look, everything's hunky-dory with the Pope. That's why you saw in that one, I just put the picture on the SDA APOSTASY.org site in the evidence for pictures, where they show the Pope washing someone's feet right on the front page. He's the one you got to follow now. So going on, this next one is from Testimonies, Volume 5 again, but now it's page 464 and 465. It's just, the very bottom of one and the very top of the other. She says, the time is not far distant when, like the early disciples, we shall be forced to seek a refuge in desolate and solitary places. As the siege of Jerusalem by the Roman armies was the signal for flight to the Judean Christians, like in 70 A.D. when you see when Jesus said, when you see the abomination of desolation surround the holy place, those who are in Judea to flee to the mountains. They saw the sign and they fled to the mountains, and 1,100,000 men, women, and children died that didn't flee. So she goes on to say that, so the assumption of power on the part of our nation in the decree enforcing the papal Sabbath, the Sunday laws, will be a warning to us. It will then be time to leave the large cities, preparatory to leaving the smaller ones, for retired homes in secluded places among the mountains. I hope and pray that you are blessed by what you heard this Sabbath day.
The ecumenical movement has infiltrated the Seventh-day Adventist Church in a big way. we'd like to thank you so much for the support you've given us, and without this support we just couldn't function. We're very, very small, and we thank you so much, and we just hope that the ministry can continue with your support, and we thank you very much. It's certainly time for us, dear brothers and sisters, to give out the books and the DVDs and tabloids, anything that the Lord makes available, to warn people and show souls that there is salvation through lovely Jesus Christ, who died on Calvary's cross. Most people at the moment are just filled with self, and that they don't realise that there is salvation. All they know is that you're born, you live, and then you die. They're walking in the darkness, dear brethren. So it's our job to help these poor dear lost souls, help them up, show them the light through Jesus Christ, the Son of God, is my prayer in Jesus' precious name. God bless. Bye.